Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. When I was pondering this idea of what are our compromises and our decisions as women, and how might those differences of choices, of how we conceptualize those parts of our lives, bring us into tension with each other, I came back to tonight. Tonight is the night of Te Rea in the Māori lunar cycle. So our ancestors lived by the moon, a very female deity in most of the cultures that I'm aware of. And so I thought that was very appropriate, and it helped me to focus my thoughts on this really important issue. Te Rea is the night after the new moon. So it's just a very small sliver of light. And for our culture, this is a time of reflection, of creativity, of getting your thoughts together. So I thought, how fitting, how appropriate for this particular reflection of mine through this chink of that moonlight, to think about these ideas of compromise and decision. And the first thing I thought about was how to communicate. So I'm communicating in English. And that is a difficult decision. And I've made the decision to compromise and speak in English because that's the language that we share. That is the wider audience. But I'm aware that there are some risks for me personally in communicating in English. Even though English is my first language, I am a champion of Te Reo Māori, the Māori language, our precious language that we fight for. And those of us who speak the language try to use any forum we have to speak in our language. So in a parallel universe for me, I'd really love to be able to talk to you about these thoughts in Te Reo Māori, because I know it would be a different kind of conversation. And it would be a conversation much more linked to my ancestors, and maybe particularly because of the night that we're in, to our female ancestors. So I'm calling on them tonight, and I'm speaking to you in English, which is a decision I've made to compromise one of the things that I hold dear. So for me, that has illustrated this fulcrum of compromise and decision. It's a kind of risk-benefit analysis, if you will. And I suppose one of the challenges is that how some of us perceive risks is different, and how some of us perceive the benefits to those decisions or compromises are very different, and how we listen to each other and how we actually even identify for ourselves what those elements might be. So what are the decisions and compromises that I've made that have been difficult, that help me think about these concepts? So sadly, like most of us, I have experienced sexual assault. And I went back to that memory when I was in my late teens, and I was really surprised by how distressed I got and how fresh those memories were, how freshly they came back into my mind, and how upset that made me when I thought about how I'd put myself in a position of trust with someone, and that they sexually assaulted me when I thought that I was safe. And then the things that I did after that. So I made the decision to get the morning after pill and to be checked out to make sure that I wasn't carrying any sexually transmitted diseases, and that I decided that I didn't want to risk a pregnancy from that experience. Now, other women from other cultures, I imagine, would go through a different thought process around that, and have different values around any pregnancy from any reason being something that had its own sacred value. So that was one of the examples that came into my mind. And then I thought about, one of the big issues in Aotearoa, New Zealand right now, is around menstruation and products that are used for us when we're menstruating, and the idea of the compromise of using products that then go to landfill that are actually bad for our bodies and bad for Papa Tuanuku, our Earth Mother, and the idea of having these moon cups and actually the that's a whole new world for women of my generation. I'm 55. I must say, my daughter and I had such hilarity when I was trying these things out, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with these. So I have actually made the decision not to use a moon cup, even though it's better for the planet, it's probably better for my body. It's just been really difficult for me to adjust, and I'm slightly ashamed to admit that. But I suppose what I want to do is to promote admitting to myself when I'm compromising. Um, Maybe the better decision for the planet, for my body, would be to use a moon cup. But right now, I haven't found a moon cup that really suits me. One of the other things I've had a big day today. I'm a psychiatrist, and I got to see a very complicated situation with a patient and her whānau, and so of course I can't talk specifically about that, but it highlighted some issues for me about compromise and decision at work. And there are some situations for me as a psychiatrist that are um, absolutely black and white. My patients are at the center of the decision. And what I notice is that for other people who are in different roles in organizations, that they are holding the organization at the center of their decision making, other women that I work with. And I felt that tension again today, as I'm sure many of you do in your different roles. So why this matters to me is as a wahine Maori, as a descendant, as a future ancestor, I want to be really clear in my own mind. I want to have my hand on my heart, learning about myself, being true to myself, being true to the values that I talk about. That I'm not just saying these cheap words. That I'm processing these things in a way that is meaningful for me, that I can sleep in my bed at night and have be true to myself, I suppose, around how I present myself in the world, who I am, actually my choices around decisions and compromise are about my identity as a woman. And it's also critical for me in my relationships with other people, so that in this space that we create when we are listening to others, processing what they're sending to us, and then responding, is recognizing that we're all quite fluid in our decisions, in our compromises, according to our age and stage, according to our life circumstances, according to our cultures and the languages that we speak. And in fact, even though we can all speak English, we speak English with a backstory that can be incredibly different. So the English that we're speaking, that I spoke about at the beginning around my compromise and not speaking te reo Māori to you, which is my favorite language, the language of my heart, is a compromise that we're all making, and we all know the richness behind that. So I think this idea of compromise and decision is a fundamental one to keep bringing forward and keep questioning, and recognize that not everyone's making the same compromises that I'm making. And I find that fascinating. I want to learn more about it. I want to use this as a mechanism to learn more about what other people are going through, what other people are thinking about. And that means that we have a richer opportunity to really share something special. So those are my reflections on this very special night of Te Rea in the Māori lunar calendar.